Welcome to the Every Night is Game Night preview series, the show where designers and publishers share their passion and answer critical questions about their Kickstarter projects. If you're on the fence about a pledge, this is the show for you.
Yo, my peoples, what's up? Welcome back to the Every Night is Game Night preview series. I'm your host, Jason. Thank you so much for joining us. A lot of Kickstarter publishers have held back throughout the last half of December, and they are letting loose. Oh my goodness, there are so many projects, and we have one that is near and dear to my heart as a story gamer, as a thematic gamer. We've already previewed this previously on another episode. We're taking some time here to really blow it out, really get into the weeds and figure out what's going on here. What are you getting? So I'm so happy to have Chris and Julia from Asmadi Games here joining me. Welcome to the show.
Hey, nice to be here.
Thanks a lot.
All right. You, like I said, you guys were good enough to have me at PAX at the booth demoing the game. And, so we had a little bit of a preview of that. But just in case you did not listen to that episode about 1001 Odysseys, let's give the people some basics. What is 1001 Odysseys?
So, 1001 Odysseys is a choose-your-own-adventure narrative co-op game. So you sit down around the table, you get various roles, and you're going to play through an interactive story. And it's super fun because you're given a map to start out with, and you're given different roles as to who you are on the starship, the Odyssey. You're playing different officer roles, as it were. So each player is very much involved in how the story plays out.
Mm-hmm. And you said the magic words, choose your own adventure. So immediately a family of games comes to mind. We're talking the choose your own adventure from Seaman. We're talking Tales of Arabian Nights if you want to go back a little bit. Pure storytelling goodness. We're not pushing cubes over here. We're not doing any of that fun stuff. It is definitely the story. It is a story-centric experience. Chris, we talked a little bit about how the story-centric experience on the main episode. Maybe you could say just a little bit more about what you guys wanted to do with 1001 Odysseys that kind of makes it a little bit different than these other games.
Yeah, so actually one of the very first games we ever played together was Tales of Arabian Nights.
It's true.
So that was definitely an inspiration towards what this game originally wanted to be. Obviously, I've read all the Choose Your Own Adventure novels from forever ago, even tried out the new Z-Man game. You got time stories and all that. And one of the things that those games succeed at different levels is making the story the star. And it's hard because obviously a lot of gamers are at the table first for crunchy mechanics and complicated rule sets or intriguing strategic experiences, but I think a lot of people are coming to the table for story experiences, and obviously a lot more people in the RPG space do that. But I think there's a lot of people in the board game space who don't realize how cool a full-on story experience is. So when we were designing the mechanics for Odysseys, we went through, quite a few iterations, and every time we realized the mechanics were just getting in the way of cool stories we wanted to tell. So our final iteration, and what's going to be going into the Kickstarter and pretty much to print, is very much story-driven. There aren't complicated rules, there aren't dice, there aren't random elements. It's very much the thing you choose to do next in the story is what decides what's going to happen in the story. It's not based on your skills or any sort of attribute system. It's just where you want the story to go. You get to bring the story there.
Mm-hmm. And so I wanted to have a conversation in three parts just to kind of break down what exactly you're getting. So talking mechanics, we're talking like kind of the story elements of it. And then I have some kind of critical questions towards the end. Let's go mechanisms first. I think you mentioned time stories, and what time stories is a game engine. They give you a big whiteboard, which I think that's a brilliant thing. Like here, just have white. and then the actual story stuff is the color and all that kind of thing. And you buy that separately. And it has a whiteboard, and it has some pawns, and it has some cubes, and that's basically it. And then all the story kind of plugs into there. I think Rado called it like a DVD player, which that kind of puts that, kind of ages you into that. I wonder what the equivalent now would be. I don't know, like a Spotify list or something. So that's what this is, right? Like you wanted to emulate that kind of time stories. This is an empty vessel, and you get to fill it with story as it comes along. So maybe you could talk a little bit about how you set that up.
Yeah, so mechanically, we divide the stories up into something called a book. And a book consists of multiple chapters, much like a real book would. And each of those chapters is what we're going to call the gameplay unit for when you sit down at the table, which takes someplace between 20 to 60 minutes to play, depending on the length of the chapter. Some are shorter, some are longer. And each chapter is self-contained, so you don't necessarily have to have been there for the previous one, but it helps. And what you have tying all this together is your save file, which is called your passport. We like using all these, nice terminologies: story, book, chapter, passport, because they all make sense in the universe. Your passport records what you've done in previous chapters and what chapters you have available. Because unlike a normal book, you're not going to go through chapters 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. You might go from 1 to 3 to 6 to 8 to do a complete playthrough of the story. And we felt strongly that one of the problems that a lot of people have with these narrative games is they're very, very long. An Arabian Nights game can take hours if you actually play by the rules.
I don't think I've ever played by the rules. Not
Does anyone
once.
actually finish?
No. But Time Stories is, 3 to 5 hours if you're really taking the puzzles leisurely, or if you have trouble with them. And it's got the system to save your game, but that's kind of annoying. Everybody that I've seen play Time Stories wants to do it in one sitting.
Right. And they usually all punchy towards the end, and that's when the big puzzle hits, and people get frustrated. It's like, oh, blah, blah, blah. So I have definitely noticed, especially towards the latter end of Time Stories, as that same formula has gone over and over again, that by that 4th and 5th hour, you're like, all right, here we go.
Everybody is toasty. But yeah, so we wanted to concretely divide up the game into these little bite-sized bits. Because, parents with kids, among other things, might want to play games with their kids, and kids can get toasty a lot faster than 4 or 5 hours.
Yep.
And by structuring the story and the gameplay in that way, it also bought us the simplicity of not having to track components between games. When a chapter ends, the board sweeps, and you might have recorded an item or two in your passport, but there's not like complicated board state to recreate or anything like that.
Like you mentioned the passport, I thought that was pretty cool because you're writing an item down, or you write a relationship down, and you have to write stuff down, which is par for the course with some of these games. But you have a little book for it, and that's kind of the only thing, right? And that's like where in another game, let's say Legacy of Dragonhold, that would be a skill, and that skill would be trained, and that skill would whatever. But here it's simple, like you either have it or you don't. And when you reach that fork in the road, if you have the key to the quartermaster's house, you can go in the quartermaster's house. And if you don't, you can do another cool thing,
Yeah, absolutely.
The other key thing we wanted, we've all experienced the tragedy of trying to schedule a Legacy game. Are you free for the next 10 to 15 Wednesdays? No? You ran out of the house? Oh, no. So while each book is one story, and so you kind of want to be around for most of it, each of the individual books are separate entries in the universe, sort of like episodic Star Trek: The Next Generation hours were. They're not a strict forward arc where if you missed book 1, book 2 is not going to make any sense, because we understand you might have different friends around the table for January and March and June when you get back to it. So we definitely wanted to focus on that aspect of not having to have a group dedicated to this box forever. because I think that's increasingly becoming a part of board gaming, and it's really tough.
Right.
That Gloomhaven box over on the corner is getting a little lonely.
You mean the one I have not sorted and haven't even
Yeah.
done the first mission yet?
Oh, we're like 20 in, and then, one of our friends that we're playing with has kids, and one just got to kindergarten, so he's really busy right now. So we're just like, I guess we'll wait to play Gloomhaven for 14 years? Oh, no.
Yeah, ever, yeah. Okay. Again, this is like a VCR, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, so you have a very simple, card system. The cards are like A, B, C, and they line up with stuff. And like A can be different in this story. It could be, a hat in this version and a car in this version, and so it's a very simple kind of bare bones components. I think Chronicles of Crime also did that approach, where it's very simple components, and then you plug and play the different missions.
Mm-hmm.
Let's go to the narrative. I guess the narrative, I mean, you don't mention this, and I'll turn to Julia because I know you're responsible for a lot of it.
Sure.
It felt very trippy. Is that
trippy?
Is that a good place to start? I'm not
Sure.
sure.
What do you mean? What exactly do you mean by trippy in terms of just how it skips around a bit, or
No, like
No.
you're going for a Hitchhiker's Guide vibe.
Oh, gotcha. No, yeah, totally. Like in terms of tone?
Yeah.
Like, I mean, well, the colors, like, if you look at the board, the color scheme is very trippy. And like, I guess, in terms of, so that gave me the sense of psychedelic. Also, like, I mean, just kind of random things happen.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
Right.
like a talking elephant will just kind of like, sitting there with smoking a pipe or something. I don't know if that was exactly it, but that seems like the kind of thing that I would encounter here.
That could definitely happen. I think we always wanted it to be just super kooky and out there and not really take itself seriously. I definitely used Hitchhikers as a kind of inspiration there. I loved it as a kid.
So Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy.
Oh, absolutely.
Mm-hmm. Reading that back, there's like a bite to it. It's definitely some parts where it's very kind of British, slap you down for being stupid type thing.
Oh, absolutely. That's kind of like my home right there. I have to say, I'm like, oh, that's my jam.
Well, yeah, that's what you want. You want
That's-
that
yeah.
goofiness, but also with a little bit of edge.
A little bit of edge.
Right.
Of course. So that's kind of what we were going for right from the very beginning, is we want people to have fun with this, but we also want them to laugh at it and laugh at themselves.
Mm-hmm.
You don't want to, the humans kind of get themselves into all kinds of, the players are the humans in this universe, and they get themselves into all kinds of hapless messes. So you're not meant to kind of take yourself very seriously here, like you might in some other sci-fi stories.
Right. And so maybe talk a little bit about, you see that's the tone of it, but maybe talk a little bit about the kinds of adventures that you'll go on.
Oh, totally. So kind of just to give a little bit of background is that the humans have gone through this, portal, and it closed behind them, as portals are wont to do. So they're kind of stuck in space. They're stuck in this area of space. They have no idea where they are, but they encounter lots of different groups of aliens who are like, hey, new aliens. And the humans are like, oh, I guess we're the aliens in this situation.
Yeah.
So they're kind of just roaming around this area of space, kind of figuring out, okay, how can we get home? And two, what can we do while we're here? So they kind of get themselves into all these different adventures. And this group of aliens that we call the Federation. I think there's 9 or 10 different alien species. We call them sentients.
Mm-hmm.
That's what we call them. So and I think you were at PAX Unplugged, so you saw all the different standees for the aliens. They're all very different, very varied, very colorful. That's kind of what we were going for.
Yeah, we didn't want to go with boring cookie cutter humanoid aliens at all places. We wanted interesting diversity there.
Oh, totally.
I think of like Mass Effect.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
where you have like the talking elephant that's back there, and like the elephant is kind of known for its facility with numbers, and they're like the mathematicians of the galaxy, and that's just kind of a known thing. And it's like, okay,
yeah.
I can get
Our art director Alana is a huge Mass Effect fan, so definitely as we've been developing art and talking to artists, we have some of that in mind. 'Cause I think Mass Effect is one of the first one of the best video games at presenting a interesting diversity of aliens that weren't just, you're boring, everybody's a humanoid, but that one's red. Oh
Yeah.
my goodness.
That one has wrinkles on its
so
forehead.
different.
Okay.
Well, I think going back to like the Hitchhiker's Guide is that Douglas
Mhm.
Adams did that
Yeah.
in such a great way as well. I think in one book of the series there was just like a talking mattress. I'm not joking on that part. There was literally a talking mattress.
Then the whale said, "Oh no,
The whale
not
said-
again." Oh wait, no, that was the flower pot.
The whale was excited.
The
to
whale
be
was
flying.
excited. Sorry.
This
I've
will make-
ruined everything.
This will make absolutely no sense if you don't know the story.
I think we're totally getting a sense for the vibe of what we're getting in with 1001 Odysseys. Like this isn't like it's for 5-year-olds. It's like it's for really young kids, but in the same way that like a Pixar movie would be for young kids. Like you'll get into like the candy of it and the whimsy of it, but there's that extra layer that a kid would totally miss, but an adult would be like, oh, okay, I can get something out of this too.
Yeah.
Yeah, and at the same time, it's not pandering to them as kids.
Mm.
We had a number of young folk at PAX Unplugged play, which was really exciting. You got to demo for a young girl and her
Oh, it
sister.
was super exciting. Because I think what you can do with that is this is the kind of game where you want to act your heart out, or you really want to emote it, and we encourage that in players because you're reading from a book. But, there's all different kinds of characters. There's different aliens. There's different situations. So how can you make this fun? It's a little bit of an RPG vibe in terms of, drawing people into the story. But that's really cool when you can do that with kids and make them feel involved.
One of the things we realized was so important, and this happened more at Unplugged than I did at Gen Con. So we ran a bunch of demos there too, was making sure people are reading and having fun with the reading. It's such a crucial part of the experience. Reading out loud to your friends in goofy voices is fun. And it's a wacky story, especially with kids. Like, I really, really see this as a game that people our age can enjoy just as a group of adults, but I totally see the appeal of a parent and 2 or 3 kids, like as a bedtime story, because the chapters are about that length.
Right.
I think it can really, really work for that group, and that was exciting to see because we had some kids at Gen Con, but just because of Gen Con's ticketing system, not as many parents with kids sign up for events. So at PAX, where people were just able to walk up to the booth and be like, "Hey, I want to play this thing," and we're like, "Yeah, that's exciting." We were able to see that more, and it was really, really heartening.
Totally.
You can actually play this probably in a kindergarten class or in like an after-school library program.
Yeah.
I mean, you need an adult to be running the game.
Yeah.
Yes.
But the kids can totally understand, do you want to go to the forest or do you want to go to the spaceport? Like that's a comprehensible question to ask the kids. It's like, should we take off or should we go into the jungle? And they'll be like, oh, let's take off in the spaceship. So it was like, no, I want the jungle. And then the kids will have a pillow fight to determine which side.
No, I want it.
That's right. Now we come up with all sorts of crazy ways to like, okay, now Julie goes, and now Rick goes, and now Grayson goes, and all that stuff. So let's get into some critical questions. We mentioned Mass Effect, and there was a huge controversy that came up with Mass Effect. And you guys are huge fans, so I'm betting you know what I'm talking about.
Yes.
Actually, Chris, I must confess, I've not played the Mass Effect series. Chris has. I am vaguely aware of it, but...
Care to share, Chris?
Yeah, so famously, the ending of Mass Effect 3 gave you a choice, and then more or less completely ignored that choice and said, all those choices you've been making and we've been tracking for the last 3 games, none of that mattered. Yep. We're just going to finish the story in a unsatisfying way that nobody's going to like because we changed story directors after Mass Effect 2.
Yep. And it was quote unquote 3 different endings, but the endings were basically 3 different
Color
explosions.
filters.
Oh dear.
It was okay. And so what was the problem? The problem there was this game promised agency. This game promised like you can go your own path. You can go the Paragon path, you can go the Renegade path, you can kill this person, you kill that person, and your choices matter, and that it forms the shape of the story. So so that's where people got frustrated, because like it kind of just it gave you all this promise, gave you this wide kind of horizon, and then just shrunk it right at the end, right where like kind of everything should pay off. So it got me thinking about player agency, and it got me thinking about like why games have mechanisms. Like, why do these story games have mechanisms? They have mechanisms so that it gives you agency. So like even if it's just a die roll, you are rolling the dice. So that it's something that you're doing. Or like in time stories, how many dice can you get together? You can get 5 dice, 6 dice, 7 dice. That reflects agency. So you've taken that away. Do you feel like this game pays off in that kind of agency way because it's so mechanics light?
Yeah. So what you have in most of those games is you have agency in that you can succeed or fail at the story based on how you utilize your skills. In any time stories mission, as far as I know, I have not played them all, there is one correct answer, essentially, and you are trying to get to that answer. You are trying to roll dice and figure out the puzzle to get there, get to the finish line. And there's one true path you have to follow to get there, and you have to do it in one loop. But the rest of the content that you miss is mostly things saying, no, you were wrong, or you're dead, or you got eaten by a zombie, or whatever.
Or way B to get to the goal, or way C to get to the goal, that kind of thing.
Yeah, but even way B and way C are usually very, very similar in time stories.
Yeah.
And what we decided to use for player agency instead is having all of those different paths be meaningfully different. So you don't have agency in the sense that you're going to be rolling dice and determining whether you succeed or fail. Your agency is in that your choices actually matter. They don't matter in picking right or wrong. They matter in different things are going to happen. One of the cool bits at the end of our demo at PAX Unplugged was we'd, be like, you're done with Chapter 1, and you now have access to Chapter 3. And everyone's like, Chapter 3? What happened to Chapter 2? And that moment makes it apparent that the things you did during Chapter 1 actually mattered in a way that I can't think of any story game that has really done that in a two different paths way rather than a success or fail way. Because that's something that's more generally reserved for D&D and tabletop RPGs. You collaborate and tell the story of what's going to happen next. Right. It's not, unless you have a very angry dungeon master, it's not die or live. It's well, we're going to go there or there, and it's different because of that. So we have focused on giving players agency and that their story decisions matter. Mm-hmm. That's what we did.
Totally.
So we're talking about player agency. So what I'm talking, we talked about it with dice, right? And people like represented with dice or like a card flip or whatever it is. But there's other more subtle ways to kind of reflect, the things that you do matter and they kind of pay off in terms of like a better outcome. So like, let's say you notice something like really clever. Like I think of the Monkey Island and all kind of stuff. Like you notice that the chainsaw can go into the collection plate, which can go up into the ceiling, and because you noticed the little thing. Like basically the act of noticing, and your facility with noticing, and your facility with like remembering and making links, pays off for you, like in terms of like a better ending. Like not that the ending without it is bad, but like you get like the Uber ending, so to speak.
Right.
If you can notice something. I think that you guys shied away from that. Is that correct?
Not in terms of getting a better ending, but if you piece things together, you're more likely to go and try certain things than you would be otherwise. Going back to the Bumble homestead for the cabbage ship.
Right.
You might not do that if you hadn't been paying attention earlier in the episode. So we do it to a degree. It's not in the sense that you'll get a secret better ending, but it is important in that it will give you access to the other path out of the chapter sometimes. You have to notice something special and be like, oh, wait, we can do this thing. Then you go do it, and it's super cool, and yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, even something as silly as, like, you have the passport and it has a lot of blanks. So if you go through the whole story and you've only filled in a few of those, you don't feel as satisfied as if you took another branch and you filled in half the book. Mm-hmm. Like, and there's a sense in, and I guess I'm talking about like less agency, than more like, kind of feeding that competitiveness that players have, that they want to do well at something. So like, if let's say I do the thing and I find 4 items, and then Frank does the thing and he finds 12 items, then I'm going to think he did it better. So do you have that kind of effect in the game at all?
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely a completionist vibe where you want to have seen everything. And we have a little achievement sticker system where there are different stickers you can earn. This is one of the stretch goals. If you do certain things, you're going to want to check off those boxes to feel like you've done everything.
And that's not just random. Like, there is payoff for paying attention to some of the subtle things.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah, we want players to explore.
Yeah. Especially when you get the items into your passport. They have a bunch of text on them that you have to sort of peek at and analyze and look for hints, which is neat. Like, I think, did we not have them the first day?
Which ones?
The actual items, the dry cleaning receipt, and the. So I don't think you saw them at PAX.
I didn't see the first.
With our printer messed up, so when you get an item in the game, you actually get a little artifact, like an actual piece of paper that is the dry cleaning receipt. And people are like, the dry cleaning receipt? Why the hell is there a dry cleaning receipt in space? There's a reason, it's important.
It is important.
There were dry cleaning receipts in Hitchhiker's Guide, darn it.
Yeah.
You get you basically start accumulating like an inventory.
Yep.
Okay. I guess dovetailing off of that, the other thing about the Mass Effect, what made it good, at least when it was good, was that you were able to kind of affect the tone of the story. So like if you went renegade and you started killing folks, right? And you get into conversations, and even like they even did subtle things like, like NPCs would just react differently to you. Like, their faces would be all stern. It's like, oh wow, this guy's coming now. You were able to kind of like you almost like cast a pall over the entire experience. Like, it was the same experience, but it just colored differently. Is there a sense of that kind of thing in 1001 Odysseys, or is it like you do a thing, and those things are different, but the tone is still in that, like, it doesn't change the overall tone of the adventure, it's just different things?
I mean, I would say the tone isn't, I don't think the tone is going to change substantially. It's more
like, it
about,
never gets like super dark.
Yeah. Yeah, that wasn't our focus.
Yeah.
It's more about what path are you going to take. There are multiple paths, multiple branches. The choices you make will determine that path.
But that being said, without spoiling too much about the first story, there's a couple different ways that it can play out, and the difference between Chapter 3 and Chapters 4 and 5 is actually kind of significant, even though they both reach the same kind of conclusion before the second half of the book begins. You wind up approaching the same situation from two different sides, so you get this totally different perspective on what's going on. And when you go back to replay it and you see the other side, you're like, oh my goodness, I understand now where those people were coming from thinking about this topic. This is entirely cryptic. But
one thing is happening. You will see it from multiple angles.
Yeah, I think there's value in that. So the tone sort of follows the large choices you make, but it does try to stay light and goofy for the most part.
Like, it's not going to be noir. It's not going to be, super, like, superhero-ish. Like, all of a sudden you're in a superhero story. Like, depending on the choices that you make. So, like, if you save the sleeping this thing, or the sleeping plumlin, or the sleeping, elephant man, and you do all these heroic things, it doesn't, like, turn into a different story. It's always going to be this kind of kooky thing.
Right. Exactly.
Okay. Do you, because, I mean, the system is very flexible, right? So you can, in theory, release different books that do play with that meta a little bit. Is that in the cards, or are you focusing basically on this kind of world that you've built so far?
Well, the system's definitely adaptable to more mechanic-driven games, and that is definitely in the cards. But not for the base box of Odysseys. We've got a solid system we want to put out. It's going to have 4 books worth of content in it, so 30-ish chapters of gameplay. But once that's been established and is out there, that's when we can start to play with a system that people understand.
So you're getting about 30 hours of gameplay out of the base box.
Right. I think about 20.
No, about 30. That's if you play through everything exactly once. And you
can play through it multiple times. You can play,
right.
You can go from chapter 1, chapter 3, chapter 8, chapter 11, chapter 2 to chapter 1, chapter 11, chapter. It all, you could just reboot and make a different choice every time. So it's even more if you wanted to kind of take the different paths. And
that was another thing we definitely wanted to focus on, was making sure that all of the paths are worth going down.
Absolutely.
Once you're done with the Time Stories episode or Choose Your Own Adventure box, you're like, I could go through and find the different ways I could die. That's only fun for the first 10 minutes.
Yeah, you can't die in this game.
Yeah.
That's not possible.
Except for the ghost episode.
Oh.
I don't actually know if it's a ghost episode. I made that up. Disclaimer.
Are you a Dresden Files fan?
I haven't gotten to read or play much Dresden.
Okay.
I know they are cool folks.
Well, I mean, there is I should probably not spoil that too hard, but maybe I'll edit that one out. But whoopsie. Anyway, well, cool. So, I mean, just to kind of, let's bring it home. You're getting what, 7 storybooks with a whole bunch of chapters in each storybook. The chapters are very, very playable. 4 storybooks. There you go. So you're getting 4 storybooks. Is there the same amount of chapters in each storybook?
Roughly.
Yeah, give or take.
So each book's going to be in the range of 80 to 100 pages and going to have, 7 to 10 chapters, depending on how short or long individual chapters are in that particular story.
They're very replayable. That you're not getting like big puzzles or anything like that. You're getting just, you're riding the wave of a story, and, you can play it multiple times and get completely different endings, every single time, which is, kind of a neat thing when it comes to some of these choose your own. Like, I think Choose Your Own Adventure had different endings, but there was definitely a better ending and a worse ending.
Yeah. There was one super goofy ending, but most of them were, you did good or everybody got eaten.
Right. Right. So none of that here. It's everything. Every story branch is you designed it to be someone cool.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
We want the box to be full of value because, people are spending their hard-earned Kickstarter dollars on our box. We want to give you a good experience for it.
We want it to be a game that we ourselves would play.
Yeah.
If we were not already spoiled.
All right. So, we talked about it at the PAX episode. We're talking about it here. I'll probably mention it, down the line. I've been looking forward to this game for a real long time. Chris, you were on the show like a year and a half ago, maybe even 2 years ago at this point. You mentioned it, and I've been looking forward to it since then. It's been
a long time ago.
So is there anything else we're missing about the, or anything else you'd like to talk about in terms of gameplay or experience or any of that kind of thing?
I guess that we're just super excited for people to see the Kickstarter, for people to play it. They can go to plumplum.com, plumplum.com. Plumplum are the little radish creatures in our demo episode, and they live on the home planet of Brumagum. So that's sort of the name that we've been using, sort of the branding name. 1, because it's cute, and 2, because it's unique.
Yeah, as it turns out, telling people to Google search for Odysseys.com is a bad plan. Is that 3 Ds and 4 Ys? What? Is that Abe's Odyssey? No, but plumplum.com is very typeable. It's plum, and then plum again, but with an I. Plumplum. And yeah, we're running our Choose Your Own Adventure prelude over there right now, which is really cool.
Right.
Oh, cool. So right now, because we're recording on the 20th, this won't go up until the new year. So
It'll
why is
still be running.
Okay, as the Kickstarter is live, you'll be able to log on the website, see some stories, and interact.
Yeah, so basically during the entire Kickstarter campaign, we'll be updating the website every day or two with a new paragraph, and people get to vote on what the next choice is that the crew makes.
Hmm.
And this is all the backstory of the Odyssey. So right now, they've been adventuring around, meeting various aliens of the Federation for the very first time, and that is fun.
All right, very cool. That was 1001 Odysseys. This is Chris and Julia from Asmadi Games. Thank you so much for spending the time talking about this really fun game. Guys, I would not be going on and on about this if I didn't believe in this product. So thank you very, very much for your time.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Thank you so much.
And that's going to do it for another episode of the Every Night is Game Night preview series. Once again, thank you so much for joining us. It is a new year. It is a new set of episodes. We have our thing that we do here at ENGN. We have the preview series and the regular episodes. In the next couple of weeks, hopefully, I hope this won't take a couple of months, I might be going off on a really different venture, and I'm excited to share that. Just wanted to kind of put a little nugget out there, just to say that this is going to change, and this is going to keep changing. I don't want to do the same thing over and over again. Obviously, there's a great thing about, kind of chugging along. Like, I'm thinking about, man, I can get to 200 episodes, 250 episodes, and da-da-da-da-da. But I definitely want to start changing things up as well. So I will put that stuff out there on all the social media. So if you want to follow me and follow all the different things that I want to do, ENGN_podcast on the Twitter. We got Every Night is Game Night Facebook group. We have www.everynightisgamenight.com. These are all the places where you can keep track of us. Also the Geek List. We have a pretty fat at this point comment section, so I like reading those. Please give us a rating, 5 stars, or however many you think we deserve, especially on the iTunes store, but all the other places where you get your podcasts as well. Once again, we love bringing this to you every week, multiple times per week if there's a preview. But we're gonna look for different ways to change it up, give you something different. I love to hear your voice on that. So this is it for this episode. That is it for the preview series. I will see you guys later. Later, everybody.